Let me we're gonna have a complete repeat. We're not going to. If you're watching this right now because we're live, we're not gonna have a complete repeat. But when you asked that question, it literally sounded like the exact same start of like, where is this at on LinkedIn? I don't even know.
Well, you also didn't even share it. You just said, "Hey, we're about to go ready. We're ready to go."
I couldn't find the link.
Well, you
But
just
you found it. You
yeah, but
found it.
I have to
definitely
do like
live now.
yeah, I know we're
Yeah.
live. It's ridiculous, but I had to do like forensic accounting to find this, Grant.
Okay, you have it. We have it.
I'm
We're
sharing it right
live now. Welcome to the second episode of Not Crypto Bros. We actually have some things that I think Jay proposed some of this stuff to chat about here. For those who are jumping in, we're going to be touching on some of this stuff. But real quick, guys, how's it going? We just heard that Jay's going to be a nomad. Jarrett just heard that I was going to launch 10,000 OnlyFans accounts, which is not true. That's why you were smirking. You're like, what were we just talking about?
Fake news.
Oh my god. It's just not appropriate. It is appropriate. Jay, thank you. Oh, sweet. I can't stay but want to say hi. Hey Kendall, how you doing?
Hey, Kendall. This is my guy, Kendall. He Kendall and I did missionary work in Haiti together, and then him and his church just took off.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
What's up, Kendall? What's up, Victor?
Victor stays in the chat. I actually just dropped an episode with him today on More Than Blockchain, so people can check that out. That's a great episode. Victor is from Puerto Rico, and
he's laughing again.
I'm sure he is, and I can see a future where he and I do some Spanish content episodes, which I'm very excited about.
Should we have him in the lower corner and just do like Spanish translation all the time? That's so inappropriate.
Well, I mean, he can hold up cards. It's like the subtitles.
Like sign language.
Exactly. That's probably in the future to come. Actually, can I share with you guys a crazy idea before we get into our list of topics?
Let's do it.
Go for it.
So I was recently in Colombia, as you know, for the first episode. I was dialing in all the way from Colombia, from Bogota. And I listen to Jay Harris whenever he talks about podcasts, because I do believe he is the Podmaster Jay at Podmaster Jay. And exactly, Jay, just point out your thing. And Jay had put up something more recently, like in the last month, about two ideas. One of them is that there's not enough podcasts or content being created, especially around crypto or really anything, in Spanish when compared to English. Now, I understand this English is the lubricant of business in the world. It is the language that like people can get around with. It's kind of easier to learn maybe than other languages, etc. And so there was that. Jay's pushing me to think about Spanish. And then the other thing was Jay put up something which was about narratives. And Grant, you always talk about narratives or stories being inherently part of how we engage. It's why we buy things. It's why we don't buy things. It's why we hang out with these people. It's why we don't. It's why we listen to this music, why we don't. So I have these two ideas that are bobbling out of my head, one of them being narrative and one of them being Spanish. And I wanted to share them with you guys today live. So one of the things I think I want to do is I want to create a narrative podcast all in Spanish. And I don't know whether it's going to be fictional or non-fictional. But if it is fictional, it's going to be something kind of like Interstellar, where all the science that has to do with Bitcoin or all the Bitcoin facts are obviously hardened and truthful, but the storyline may be set in the future, et cetera, et cetera. So anyways, I wanted to put that out to you guys because
I like that idea.
I like it.
Yeah, I may come to the Not Crypto Bros and ask for some ideas on how to write it. And then I have a couple writers in Colombia who are very interested to do this because they would help out with the podcast, et cetera. I don't know if we'd have voice actors. I don't know how dynamic it would be, but I wanted to put that out to you guys and then get your feedback. And we just do it live.
Here's an idea for that. I love this idea, by the way. And something that's been coming to mind a lot lately is there was a book in the 70s called Future Shock. And it was this idea of culture shock, but the technologies and the technophiles of the future folding back on current people. And it was nonfiction, actually. It was sociological. And that with cyberpunk has been hitting me a lot. And it would be very intriguing if Jarrett, this is kind of your pet project, and with your flavors, it would be very interesting to hear a fictional telling of Bitcoin's, of the story of someone maybe in Venezuela or Colombia adopting Bitcoin and some of the actors they encounter, like banking actors and narco actors and just local people as they adopt the technology. But here's the trick: your desire to go interview real people and real farmers. Why didn't you adopt this? You and I were talking about this on, I think, on our call. It would be very intriguing if, for research for the story arc, you were down there, did interviews, and wove those really into the fictional storytelling.
I love that.
I love that idea. And I want to shout out Davian Graham. You said that is very true. A narrative Spanish-based podcast series is a great idea. And I think you're 100% right. What I'd want it to be is, like I said, the fictional part, you know, the fact and fiction would kind of get blended. But what I've thought about is it's a kid who comes back from 2040 to Colombia to 2023 Colombia. And he's like, you got to get on Bitcoin because this is what's going to happen.
Like back in time?
The currency's going to collapse. You're going to have to probably adopt the dollar. Everything's going to go upside down, etc. And this is how this is going to affect you. And then you're out talking to a farmer who I could go talk to a farmer right now about maybe being bankless because it's so hard for him to actually open up a bank account due to the restrictions in Colombia. So there are many ways to play it, but Latin America has always, especially Colombia, has always grown and been able to understand certain social things through the lens of telenovelas. And for me, it's a telenovela podcast, right? It's like
interesting.
Yeah. And so
Rogelio. What is that? Jane the Virgin? That was my favorite Latin name. It's my favorite Latin name, Rogelio. Sorry.
Well, at least I know what I'll be calling you when you come down, because Grant, I'll be like, who's Grant? This is Rogelio.
I don't have a Spanish name. In Spanish class, they gave me the Spanish name Horacio. And I was like, what the fuck? Like what's Grant in Spanish?
Oh my god!
But anyways, Rogelio, I'll take it. Yeah,
that's the idea. I have to build it out, but it's something I really want to do. Jay, do you have any? Because you were the one that kind of put both of these ideas in front of me. Do you have any ideas? And then Victor's got a question.
Yeah, I love it. I'm actually doing something similar with like a true crime podcast for Web3 around like crypto crimes, and there's been all of these murders and kidnappings and stuff. I'm trying to take those true stories and fictionalize them a little bit and create a narrative just similar to what you're doing. So maybe we should put our heads together and come up with something.
I like that. And I like how you said that, Jay. The true stories and weave them into a fictional retelling. I mean, have you guys ever read the backdrop on John McAfee?
No.
He was one of the, So Jay, like this guy has a wild as F life. And like down to the point where like he escaped the Costa Rican police by burying himself in the sand outside of his, the guy is nuts, but he was a billionaire. And then he died alone in a Spanish prison just a few years ago. And that story is like interesting, but to say there's so many gaps that the public doesn't have with some of these stories, or like Kim.com. If you guys remember that guy, he was part of Silk Road, I think, or some background like that.
Okay.
And then weaving the gaps, filling the gaps with the Web3 narrative, because maybe some of these stories are recent enough that maybe these characters were actually so far ahead, and institutions or bad actors are trying to prevent the unfolding of truly decentralized currency, which is a narrative that really is happening. So I like that idea, Jay. I like the way you said that. Hey, Jarrett, you want to field Victor's comment here?
Yeah, I thought it was a question, but it's just that, people in Venezuela were able to survive their currency crash because they held Bitcoin or some type of crypto. And yeah, I think that's spot on. And I haven't, part of me wants to do it, obviously, in the context of Colombia, because that's so near and dear to my heart and I am a citizen there. But yeah, it's exactly what Jay said. I want to weave fact and fiction in a way. My whole goal, the entire goal, which is a one-sentence goal, is increase Bitcoin adoption among Colombians. That's it. And I think the way to do that is vis-a-vis a really cool narrative podcast in Spanish with Colombian Spanish from different parts. You can hear it. Oh, this is what the person from Medellin was doing. This is what the person from the coast is doing, because all the accents are very, very distinct.
Yeah.
And so yeah, and Keegan said, good podcast episode on Joe Rogan when he interviews John McAfee. I will have to check that out. Yeah, if you can share the link, that'd be great. I don't want to deviate anymore, but maybe for another episode, we can just talk about different ideas in a way to tell the narrative and story of crypto. Cause it sounds like Jay's working on something. I've got my idea. It's still in the idea phase, but I do have people in Colombia when I told them about it, and they're journalists and actors. They're like, yeah, this sounds really cool. We would love to help. So
no, I like that. Yeah. And we could carry on, but this actually feeds into the latter point. What is building? Because I was going to ask that question as the three of you have been out there. Like when people like, hey, everyone's gone quiet, we're building. And I'm like, wait, what the fuck are people building? Like, and I know for the public, for the viewing audience, I'll tee you guys up for that question because I know what you all are building, but I've been looking for a third leg to my content stool. And this idea is really intriguing. So yeah, we don't have to deviate much further into it, but I appreciate you sharing it because it's actually really inspiring. Like, I don't know if you know, but I've written 2 fiction novels and I've written 50,000 words or more. But I want more dynamic content. And this really does get me pumped from my view would be from a cyberpunk perspective. But it would be very interesting. Anyways, that's good stuff. Thanks for the comments, everybody. We really appreciate that. Like or share or subscribe to what we're doing if you find someone. Keen again says people are building lightning, and I think he's being serious, but he could also be facetious right now.
Yeah, I can't tell if he's like referring to the Lightning Network or people are outside
lightning in a bottle,
Benjamin
bro.
Franklin in it.
Yeah, man.
Jay, do you want to take Grant's question of what are people building? I think it's great.
Let's just start there. What are people building?
I think that there's a lot of building going on. There's a lot of raising capital is happening. Grant, you talked about this last time, I think, where there like a lot of these funds collected a lot of money during the upcycle, and now they have to figure out what to do with it. So it's all of these companies that are ready to start building. They're the ones that are collecting a lot of this. One person that I interviewed for my podcast, Berwin Tanko. He's the founder of Ekta. Ekta.
How do you spell that real quick so I can just drop it in the comments?
EKTA, the company, EKTA.
No, his name.
Berwin, BERWINTANKO. Berwin Tanko.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah. And so he recently raised 60 million. And
wow.
So
wow. Wait,
in the last couple
you
weeks,
interviewed a bro who raised 60 million?
Yeah. I interviewed him before he raised the 60 million, but yeah.
What Jay is trying to say is the interview led to the 60 million.
Not at all.
Interview me. Let's turn the mic around.
The episode isn't even out yet. But yeah. But yeah, so I think that there's a lot that's happening in this space, whether it's like people who are building metaverse spaces or people who are finding ways to sort of prolong the life of their NFT projects, like what Bored Ape is trying to do. But the sky's the limit at this point.
Well, the sky's the limit, but if you to borrow that allegory or analogy, like they're seeing some gravity right about now. So when you say people are building like in metaverse spaces, are they just sitting, in your estimate, are they just sitting on stacks of cash and actually doing some legit hiring and building out their teams, or are they just building the tech?
Yeah.
Or are they just building on existing metaverse structures?
I feel like a lot of what's happening is there like development teams, like teams of people who've come together and say, like we're a bunch of developers, we'll develop your app for you or your metaverse space. And that's really what's happening. I get the impression right now that a lot of the metaverse founders aren't developers, so they're outsourcing a bunch of that work. So it's not hiring that's happening. It's more like spending on outsourced teams from other countries.
Now that's interesting, and so we hired. I mentioned this last time. We invested in a Discord bot, and we have a team of developers that we outsource to. One is in Turkey, the other is in Finland, and the other is in Ethiopia. They're building and they are working morning, noon, and night on people hiring them like we are. and they're just working around the clock and they're skilling up. We met 3 weeks ago and I said, do you know Solidity to build on Ethereum? And they said, no. We talked to them late last week and they're like, yep, we got Solidity now. Like, and you're like, what the hell? And so there's a lot of outsourcing and a lot of skilling up. As an entrepreneur who about 40% of my entire wealth is in crypto right now. Now, you guys know I have real estate, I have small businesses, I have other things, and I want that number to go up. But I see this from an entrepreneur. When an entrepreneur tells me they're building, I hear infrastructure, I hear hiring, maybe fundraising, but that money's not always or not majority being outsourced. Because when you outsource in that, wherever those resources land, that's the company that's actually being built. So reading between the lines, is it your opinion? Or do you think that, let's say, I'm making these up. Let's just say some DAO raised 20 million. Now they're spending it. They're outsourcing it. Is the DAO actually being built, or is the outsource company actually the one who's going to be here for the second wave?
Yeah, more than likely it's the outsourced company. But at the same time, what I've been hearing, like in your DAO example, I've been hearing of a lot of DAOs who that they don't just have like piles of money that they're ready to start building with. What they've done is say 20% of this is for building at the moment, but then we're investing the rest of it so that we can ensure that we survive through this crypto winter.
And I've seen that, and specifically, you guys know that I nearly lost my shirt in Wonderland, but I keep checking in on them weekly. And to your point, it's very boring, it's very quiet, but they've stopped the bleeding, and they have posted their investment portfolio, and it's all vested. And
hey,
so
Jaya.
What'd you say?
It's just
Jaya.
Jaya. Hey, Jaya.
Yeah, man. So as it comes, I mean, that's an example of the DAOs, but I just had a friend who I've been onboarding into Web3, and, he said, Grant, I followed all your suggestions on Twitter, and it seems the conversation seems pretty shallow and just NFT driven. Who's actually building tech? And do you have any examples, not just of a DAO building community, which is building? Granted, it's absolutely building. And since we're on this, let's just ask and go around for those who popping in and watching. Jarrett and Jay, both of you, maybe Jarrett first, Jay second. What are you two building right now? Because it's legit, and I want to legitimize it.
Yeah, before I talk about kind of what I'm building, I want to also say that projects like MetaMoms, and I think we all know the MetaMoms. We've all come across them. Either you've had them on your podcast, or you know who they are. You've engaged in the space of them.
Absolutely.
They are, Jaya says, people forget blockchain tech. They are one NFT project, probably of about 1,000, I would say, that was about to launch.
Yes.
And then saw the crypto winter and it got cold, and they totally didn't. And I've had conversations with them, and they're like, our building goes from making sure the tech and the metadata and all the stuff that we were going to need to launch is now going back to just building community and just keeping people close to the fire. So that way, when the money is back in, there's more liquidity. It's not so emotionally kind of ominous.
Yeah.
And people are going more towards euphoria with the market. Then they're going to launch again, probably. And hopefully it will do better. I found that to be really interesting. And if you look on the non-technical, I just want to focus on the non-technical part. If you look at the non-technical job openings that were open for Coinbase, Gemini, Binance, Kraken, any one of these. And I looked at a lot of them.
Still hiring.
Binance is still hiring, just because it has Kraken too. Just because a lot of the things I don't have a background in coding, so I was looking at some of that stuff, some of the business development, some of the partnership development, and a lot of them had this very nebulous job called community manager.
Yes.
And I applied for a community manager job with Algorand, and if you looked at the job, it was 6 jobs in one.
Yes.
It was business development, it was marketing, it was branding. It was basically going to events. It was curating a Discord, which isn't a job all itself.
Yeah.
It was, it was like making brownies for people, pouring coffee. And for me, it was going to be in 2 languages. And the pay wasn't that great, but it's like, basically what I'm trying to go to is what I see that people are going to focus on in this winter is as much tech as it's going to be refining the narrative
Yeah.
and making sure that whether it's an NFT project, whether it's your crypto project, whether it's a DAO, whatever it is, you need people to really understand what you're doing. So when the market starts to go back up, you're going to have this like 50 to 100 to 1,000, depending on the size of people that are going to be out there
Network.
just ready for you, ready to
Network.
back you up when other people talk shit on social media. That's kind of what I'm seeing, right?
Yeah.
And so that kind of builds into what I want to do and what I'm trying to, I say build, but it's really like non-technical. I'm trying to build out More Than Blockchain. And if you go to More Than Blockchain and listen to my 29th episode, I am trying to build out this. I consider this now part of More Than Blockchain just for you, Grant, as it's part of Spark, and Jay, it's part of your Web3 network. So I want more audio. I already told you about the audio I want to do with kind of like a narrative telenovela podcast, definitely in Spanish about Bitcoin in Colombia.
Yeah.
So there's my audio. The video, I want to start doing interviews with people, 5-minute interviews, and then just like throw them up on TikTok, Instagram Reels, or YouTube Shorts, or whatever. Small interviews. That's the visual.
Yeah.
Written, I'm talking to a guy. I don't know if he's on right now, but he's in Nigeria, and he may start to be writing me out blogs. We can put him up on More Than Blockchain's Medium.
Mustafa?
No. I'm actually blanking on, I can think of his last name, but we're hopefully talking this week, which is really exciting. So then I have audio, visual, and written. The fourth component is I want to create educational courses, both in English and Spanish, and make them free.
That would be huge.
And then the fifth one, which I hope will long-term float, so all these other things can be done and paid for or done, given away for free, is the consulting. Because I'm so convinced that every company by 2030 we'll be trying to figure this out. But all the companies that are, there's going to be 1,000 companies by 2024, 25 for the next bull run. They're going to be freaking out and they're going to want answers. And I think guys like ourselves, we're going to be there as kind of the non-technical advisors that can speak to the tech, the narrative, the history, the macro and global positioning of how this all works. And for me, a guy with a master's in international affairs, I'm like, if you really care about refugees and you care about supporting people that are going to lose their livelihoods, they're going to lose their homes to drought, war, famine, everything from the climate crisis, you have to start to figure out how people can hold some of their value on chain when you have to leave and you only have a bag, right? So that's not just for the rich Ukrainians, right? That's for anyone. And that's something that Victor touched upon when he's talking about Venezuela. So that is what I'm really trying to do. Those are my 5 pillars of More Than Blockchain. It's the challenge that I've given myself. And I think it's going to be really fun to bring in other people to help. And you guys are both part of that. Because I think that Grant, knowing you've written 2 fictional books, and Jay, you're trying to do, and we've talked about the value of a narrative podcast. I want you guys as exec producers on those for sure. You're going to have your fingerprints all over, because I think the biggest thing that in the crypto winter is no one builds anything alone. When the market's going up, everyone's an individual, everyone's flying high. It's a lot of ego. There's no ego in the crypto winter. That's where it's actually cold, and you have to huddle together to not die of hypothermia. And to be honest, that's kind of what we're doing here. So Jay, I'll pass you the rock.
Yeah, Jared, I think we connect on a lot of what you're saying there, especially on the audio side, on the education side, on the consulting side, with making sure that people have access to the types of information that they need so that they can survive through the winter and then be ready to go when things come back. So for me, I think we all had this conversation about what I think about podcast miniseries. I think having a thematic limited series is really where podcast is heading, and so that's really what I'm trying to build out, like a lot more miniseries that are based on themes that people are really interested in, like how do you not get scammed for NFTs, things like what we were talking about just before we got on, in terms of I think we were talking about here when we got on those crypto true crime series. Right. So doing stuff like that to educate people but also keep them entertained. I think ultimately the main goal for me is to take all of that content that's being produced and turn it into a learn to earn offering, where when you listen, there's some information that you get, and you're able to receive some reward, some token, some type of monetization for having gone through the process of listening to that content, and you've learned something from it.
You know, to your point, Jarrett, about no one builds anything alone. Part of the reason I invested in this Discord guy, Austin, he's an awesome guy. We got to talking, and if you're on YouTube at all, I think I mentioned this in one of our talks. This guy Jesse Eckel has a 0 to 1 million channel, and he took like a year and a quarter to go from 0 money to 1 million. Total transparent journey. Awesome guy, and he's a good character. Like Mr. Beast is fun, but like this guy is like what I would call good people. This Jesse Eckel character, Austin, and as such, he was in the Rome DAO. They picked up Rome DAO. They started their own little thing, and they call it House of Obsidian. And they started a Discord around this. Well, the Discord's up to something like 30,000 people. And as the DAO started tanking, they pivoted to be a personal development, personal support, coaching thing. And they just started pumping out 2 AMAs a week with skilled people. And they just started building community. Well, my co-founder, or the founder of the investment I'm in, Austin, became their moderator. And Austin and I got to talking, and he is like a moderator on 20 or some odd different Discords, but like giving. And I asked him, I was like, how are you able to do this? And he said, he didn't use the word building, but I'm investing. And then we talked about this idea of launching our Discord bot. Well, this Discord bot does a very specific function. He didn't even think of it till later. He was building the relationships first. Now he's got 50. You gave the number 50. He's got 50 interviews and events and AMAs lined up across 30 different Discords. And some of them are to the tune of tens of thousands of people now that he has a real product that's solving a real problem. And so as we talk about building, you know, it's easy to critique the NFT boys and girls out there who were waiting to launch a product and didn't launch that product. I'm really interested in where the tech is at and what's going on. And I think a lot of them have their head down. That's one thing I'm interested in. The other thing I'm interested in is, where are the executors, the executives, the people with entrepreneurship know-how, that know how to build an HR department, that know how to build a hiring funnel, that know how to keep company culture and actually build a company. Building implies to me is building a company and helping sustain those efforts over the long term, which is tough in a decentralized world in Web3. What I've realized my role is exactly what you two have said. I'm a coach and trainer by trade. And it feels like you had this little Web3 bubble that appeared, and like a cell, and then you took a needle and punctured the cell, and then you injected it with elements of society, of elements of entrepreneurship that were Web2, like storytelling, community building. And to me, like that, knowing my gifts and my role led me into the same thing of narrative or story or content creation. I'll generalize right now because mine's a bit more amorphous than the two of yours. But that's what I'm thinking when I think building is, where's the entrepreneurship and the building the business at? But then also knowing, you know, it takes all kinds, and it's probably going to take a while for the business builders to show up, because it is tough to know the incentives. That's the biggest complaint in Web3. Jarrett, you said the toughest thing, the pay was bad. The pay wasn't great.
Well, the pay was actually okay, but I think it was, and I remember that making this comment to the recruiter. I remember saying, you have a Web 2, what was it? You have a Web 2 understanding of roles, and you're hiring for Web 3.
Ooh.
So the pay needs to align with that. And Danny Hamilton, he says, my guy, Jay. Just want to call that out as we're seeing it live. It just kind of is weird, you know. And I think it was like these cryptocurrency companies, they come up with this amazing thing, and like many builders, they just think about how great the product is, and they don't realize that it's how you communicate the product that really sees whether it sinks or swim. And so you have something like Algorand, which is super impressive. But you know, I was looking at the northern part of South America community manager for a bunch of different countries, and then they were going to have one in Argentina for the southern cone of South America. So anyways, you know, it was these positions that if it was in a Web 2 company, is probably getting paid a lot more. It's not called a community manager, and it's given a different name, and they have a lot more access to things. So anyways, my takeaway there was just kind of like, I don't think that the pay in crypto for some things aligns with the actual role that it plays. And that's also just because it's so new. Whereas you take a Web2 company that's been around for 30 or 40 years, they know how valuable things are. And I think the pay is reflected in that. But one of the things I'm actually working on right now, and I was doing it in the airport the other day, and I'm going to have this up on my website. And Grant, I actually want to get with you on this for the website side of it, is I'm working on this thing where you'll put in the amount of money you want to invest, and then it will tell you what you should do with your money based on where the Bitcoin's price is. It's only going to be for Bitcoin. You could take it and you could do it with other things, but it's a very, very fine line for me.
What's it called? That tech has a name. I forget what it's called. I'm gonna figure it out before you get.
All right, figure it out, because I've been basically like, because people always reach out to me, and what do they say? When should I buy? And then I go into I go down the DCA rabbit hole. I'll send them a YouTube or two that explains why you want a DCA over a long enough time period.
Yeah.
But I find myself, and this is also mine, I'm DCAing, but I'm also keeping money on the sideline for what I believe the bottom is. And maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm still going to be at a price point that I'm just excited about long term. So it is what it is. But I've come up with a thing that if you put in how much you want to basically, it will tell you the percent of what you should be spending. If you say, hey, I want to spend $1,000 right now, it will tell you how much you should sideline and how much you should invest, depending upon where Bitcoin is from the percent of its all-time high. And I actually wrote it out, and it's really quite simple, but I'm going to put that up on More Than Blockchain eventually, because I want to just push everyone to it. It's free. And I want to make sure it says not financial advice everywhere. Right. But like, it is hopefully going to give people, and I'm going to break down the theory of how I created this thing and like how I'm using it. But anyways, that's something I am kind of more building that is tech, but I need someone to probably write some code and get in there just a little bit to make sure it's all copacetic, for lack of the term. I wonder if Jay's got the name.
It's called a robo-advisor.
Robo-advisor.
Robo-advisor. So yeah, that's what it would be. And it would just be a part of the website, because I think if you understand the Bitcoin cycle, and I actually sent you guys this photo. Did you guys see that photo of the halving? Yeah. I think it's kind of based on that theory, but there's a stock to flow in the idea, but I do hope to have that up as a guide for people. So,
my rule of thumb with dollar cost averaging is, if I see any cash injection, if it's a cut of some pay I, scrape from my companies, or if we sell a property or whatever, I have like a set percentage, and it doesn't matter. To me, what DCA is it doesn't matter where it's at. Now, if you're approaching a halving or something, that might be something. Sean says, great idea. So, part of why I love doing the shows that we do is when you float an idea and you get feedback, it gives you a clue, like, hey, that might be something worth building. And the thing you're talking about, like a robo-advisor that Jay's talking about, that's not that hard. That's not that hard to build. But I have a very like a rough rule. If I get a cash injection, I literally take half and buy the position no matter what it's at. And then the other half is a systematized purchase that happens consistently no matter what. And there's nuance to that, but your idea about halving is actually interesting, and timing some of that could be.
I just think with Bitcoin, it's not like the stock market. And because it is programmed, we know when the next halving should occur within about a week, if not more. And so you got to take that into account when you look at it. Because if you look at the all-time of Bitcoin, it's, there's times where you really want to be buying, and there's times when you really don't. Like when it's
interesting,
when it was 60 and it was going to the moon, you maybe want to hold off. You maybe just want to like, see where it's going. Because I also have a rule too, that I don't FOMO in, and I do that because I don't buy anything near 30%, close to 30% to its all-time high. So as it's going up and it's breaking all-time highs, I do not buy. That is just
even if you're like, so that this raises a great question. Jay, do you do dollar cost averaging?
No, I look at the charts and try to figure out when
You're a
it looks like it's
technical
going up. Yeah,
investor. Okay.
really technical.
The charts. He's got the whole thing behind. No one will ever see it. Only Jay sees it, but he's got the charts.
He's gonna pull that curtain down one day. It's just gonna be like algorithms.
Yeah, exactly. Whiteboards and whiteboards.
So for me, dollar cost averaging is I set my amount weekly, monthly, bi-weekly. It's the same amount. It doesn't matter if it's approaching the all-time high. Doesn't matter if it's approaching the all-time low. It buys. If it's a ridiculous low, like Bitcoin's been getting, like pushing some lows, I might manually add additional buys. But my automated buy keeps going. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, this is what this gets to. This says as you get closer to the all-time high, you still invest, but you invest less and you keep more cash.
That's cool.
Right?
I dig that.
And then when you're in the lows, you invest a lot more and you keep less cash. So you always have cash on hand just in case you find a position you really want to put. But I've been working on that because then as you keep the cash on hand, you know, say you put $1,000 in, and my thing is like, if it's down 90%, then you invest $900 and you save $100 because it's so cheap. Yeah. And then you put that 100 onto the next month, and then you have 1,100, and then you take 90% of that, and it kind of compounds out. That's why I'm starting to do it now, only because with Bitcoin, it's programmable. And after having gone now through one bear market and seen the whole thing, this will also allow me to buy at a time. Like the guy G Clef, who is on Twitter, who came on my podcast, he was like, we were talking, we're like, dude, we're not even near the Bitcoin bottom, because when the Bitcoin bottom sets in, you don't want to buy because you are actually fearful. Right now, it still feels like a sale. Like, you know, you went to the back of Old Navy and you found the shirt that fits good, and you're going to buy it because it's $3. It is when you're scared and you you judge yourself, you know, when you buy and then you look in the mirror and you start crying. That's when Bitcoin's at its bottom, and it's not there yet. So anyways, do we want to transition into Three Arrows? Because otherwise we're just never going to get to it.
Who wrote the question about Three Arrows?
I think it was Jay.
Jay, what were you talked to us about Three Arrows. What's going on with Three Arrows?
So 3 Arrows is a crypto hedge fund. They recently declared bankruptcy, chapter 15. Actually, I don't know the difference between, was it chapter 15 and chapter 13? Grant, do you know
looked
the difference?
It up because I thought you were going to research it. So I was like, I'm going to show that I'm not a dummy. So I'm going to look it up.
I did not. Go for
I
it.
thought it was chapter 11. So I'm glad somebody did something.
Oh, is it 11? Well, they filed for chapter 15. So I think the other one is probably chapter 11.
So real quick then, on chapter 15, what it said, and I didn't research if this was true, but the article said was that chapter 15 protects foreign investors from U.S. creditors. So it allows them to file, and it's just purely the assets that are available to the American audience. And then the foreign investors, no creditors are going to go after them. That's the chapter 15 anyway.
Okay, yeah. So, that's the way I understood it as well, because they're actually based in the British Virgin Islands, and they're liquidating everything in the Virgin Islands, but they're holding on to everything that's stateside.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's it. And I thought that Singapore, the government in Singapore required them to shut down, if I'm not mistaken, from something I read. And this was triggered for a default on some loan, correct?
Yeah, that's what it seems like. Seems very similar to what we saw in, was it 2007 with Lehman Brothers?
Yeah.
Remember that?
So what are the dominoes here? Go ahead, Jay or Jarrett. What do you got?
Yeah, it said I was just trying to do my homework on this, so I didn't seem like the dummy. I think that's, you know, we're always going to push ourselves to be better because nobody wants to be the dummy. That's the only reason why we show up quasi okay for the test. But it said the crypto fund had been directly in the crosshairs of the Luna crash, with exposure of more than 200 million and speculated to be as high as 450 million.
Yeah.
And the thing that I found most interesting, I found this is an article from, I think it's called The Bitcoinist, but I was looking at one also from The Guardian. This is the thing that I found really, and it goes back to what we're just talking about the Bitcoin cycle. And it says, founder and CIO Su Zhu, who had been vocal about his belief in the super cycle where nothing really crashes, would soon be proven wrong. This to me is so important because for a long time, guys like Raoul Pal and some other people are like, oh, this, you know, this idea of Bitcoin doesn't really exist. Like this whole cycle thing with Bitcoin doesn't exist. The halving really doesn't do anything. And I think it was all of these newer people into the space that started to believe that this thing was going to go up forever. And I think that this is because they came from traditional markets into crypto. They brought a lot of money, and then they saw something go 10x that they had never seen before. So then they started to believe in their minds. They totally were in euphoria. And that is the time we all know when we should sell, right? And start to take positions, take profits. And I just think that they got caught up and they got way over leveraged. But it's so fascinating to see, as you were saying, the dominoes, because it looks like 200 million comes out of Luna. So Luna had its tentacles and everything. And for me, it's kind of like Lehman Brothers, but it's also like Barry Madoff, who also came out in 2008, because that dude had $65 billion in a Ponzi scheme. And when that thing fell out, there was a great podcast about it. It touched like it talked about this family in Chile who had like invested some money through some pension fund, which was to some other pension fund. And it was totally like The Big Short, where they talk about the synthetic CDOs, because everyone was just making bets on top of pure dog poop. And so when the dog poop got picked up, everyone got left out. And the same thing has happened now. But my thing, when I read that was the thing that was most shocking. You have this guy who was brought in, a CIO, and he believes in this idea of the super cycle, even though if you were on YouTube, if you were following the content creators, or you were following the rhythm, if you were following the way Bitcoin works, everyone was like, this thing has cycles. It will go down. It can't, anything that goes up this quick is going to come down just as quick. Yeah. And that's the way Bitcoin is. Bitcoin breaks your heart.
Bitcoin breaks your heart.
If you were looking for an episode, there's your title.
That's the title. Bitcoin breaks your heart. Now, do you have a working definition of super cycle?
I think the super cycle that I would use is just that they didn't think that there was going to be this crypto winner and that Bitcoin essentially was just going to continue to go up. Now, I think one of the theories was that, as traditional markets went down, if we think 20 or 30 years ago, what do the family offices and hedge funds do? Well, they put most of their money in gold and silver to try to keep their purchasing power. And then when it goes back up, then they buy back into the markets, or they buy low into the markets, and then they rise it back up. But I think what I've heard is that people thought that because Bitcoin was the new digital gold, that in this time of crisis and liquidity, people would go into Bitcoin as opposed to go into gold as the markets went down to hold their purchasing power. But
I believe some
more
than
the
last
did that,
cycle. But not enough to truly,
right.
More than the last cycle. But I think the idea of the super cycle was that we weren't going to have this crypto winner, and it wasn't going to be tied to the halving because of institutional and retail adoption having grown so much since 2017 that we weren't going to have this lull. So people probably had leverage positions. They were like, 3-1, it goes to 90. And then when it doesn't crack 70, a lot of people are getting wiped out with leverage positions.
It's the leverage, right? The leverage is the issue in this whole thing.
Huge leverage. Like, I was just looking, my brief, Jay, and tell me if you've got something different. I did a quick research on this. They spent $200 million on Luna back in February. That was part of a $670 million loan from Voyager, Mark Cuban's investment company, which I have money over there, and I cannot stand the platform. Because it's all pseudo coins on the Ethereum network. So if you try to move your money, it's pseudo wallets. If you try to move your money, the fees are ridiculous just to move that money. Like, worse than Coinbase, worse than KuCoin. It's insane. But they had a $670 million loan from Voyager. They defaulted on that loan. Then that threw off. That puts Voyager at risk. Because they have that on their balance sheets. And then BlockFi. And then I think, didn't FTX just announce that they might buy BlockFi to?
I think that was a rumor, right? Like, that came out.
Was it a rumor? Okay, I apologize. Yeah,
I think it was a rumor. I don't know how substantiated it was, but it did seem real for about 24 hours.
FTX came out and said it wasn't true, and they were saying BlockFi made it up because they wanted to pump up their prices.
Oh, sugar! Oh my God.
That's not a good look.
That's not a good look. But let me tell you something. Companies, to your point about 2007, 2008, companies have been doing this for so long. We have just never had so many and so strong magnifying glasses as we do with this right here and Reddit boards. And we can see this shit transparently for what it is. What was your thought, Jarrett? You had a thought there.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. But I think the other thing is that I have so many people in my circle that, and you guys probably too, and if you're into crypto, you definitely have this person, maybe you have multiple of them. They are so quiet when it goes up, But when that shit goes down, they basically drop rap albums in your friggin' chats about how dumb you are, how bad it is.
Made you a mixtape.
I told you. Yeah, I'm like, sweet mixtape, bro. I don't care. Like, I'm still buying. This is where I'm at.
Yeah.
And so the other thing is every single, like, my dad sent me an article, and he sent me an article only because he's like, yeah, check out the FUD. And his college roommate sent me an article, and he's like, hey, I thought you'd want to see this. And it was all like, you know, Bitcoin is dead, crypto is dead.
Yeah.
And so I guess my point is, like, when Bitcoin goes up, the media is curious. When Bitcoin goes down, they bring the pitchforks. Right? They come to the town square ready for, like, you know, ready to do some business. And I just think it's bullshit and it's cute. And in the long run, I'm excited to listen to this episode in, like, you know, 10 years when wherever, you know. So, but the thing I was going to say, I was the Guardian article I was reading also said that it said the three Arrows Capital had been deeply invested in a number of troubled cryptocurrency projects, including Terra, as well as, and this was the one I knew that they had a problem, but I didn't know the money was to this tune, as well as Axie Infinity, a play-to-earn game that lost $700 million to a hack from North Korea. And I know Axie Infinity's had a lot of problems as of late, and I think it just comes down to liquidity, because when you're paying people to play, you can really only do that when the market's going up. When the market is going down, I think it just becomes really, really difficult. And I think that this is what a lot of the DeFi has started to deal with.
And the trouble with that, pause that. From a business perspective, catch that thought. Put your thumb where you're at right there. If the market is going up, you play a game like Axie Infinity or whatever the game was. You play this game and it's fun, and you forget that it's fun because in your mind, you're earning real money. What happens when the market goes down and it's just Super Mario coins? So now your greatest strength was to play this game.
Can you grow? Is there a mushroom? Do you grow?
Yeah. But what was your greatest strength becomes suddenly your greatest weakness. People are asking themselves, is this actually a fun game?
Yeah.
And this is where DeFi gaming has really struggled. Is this actually flipping fun? And I haven't played a single one of these games that I thought, oh shit, if they removed my economic incentive, I would still play. Not a single one.
I agree 100%. And that is why I suck at video games. This will be on my tombstone. But I will watch people play video games because I think it's really cool. And the second, and maybe this already exists, if it already exists, shame on me for not knowing this. The second Fortnite involves a pay-to-play with some certain coin. If you hold an NFT, then you can earn this coin. It is freaking over because people play that game no matter what.
Yeah.
But the game is fun.
Yeah. And this is the thing that I think is going to happen in the next bull run is instead of selling all these tokens with the hope of now we're going to have this video game, and I'm blanking on the NFT project that just totally flopped. Remember, it was like really shitty PFPs, and it was like a meme joke for a while. Do you guys know which one I'm talking about?
Was it playing on another NFT?
No, they had like 70 million they had in capital, and they just like burnt it, and it looked really crappy. And the three of us could have done better with probably $1,500, but I forget. But their whole thing was that they were going to have this video game behind it, and it's like you're
Azukis.
No. I'll think of it, and I'll look it up before we're out of time here. But it's like you're doing this wrong. If you have an awesome video game and then you move to monetize, amazing.
Yes.
If you sell NFTs and you're going to like, oh, with 70 million, we're going to build a video game. No, a top-notch video game with the R&D and the development and the code and everything that needs to get done, the animation, the graphic work, the direction of the story, you're probably looking cheap $300 to $400 million.
Yes.
So I think the biggest problem with NFTs, and I know we're talking about NFTs, we've kind of gone a little bit away from Three Arrows Capital, but I think it's a problem with the cryptocurrency market too, is in the bull market, it is easy to overpromise and underdeliver.
Yeah.
All of those things that did that in the bear market, they're gone. They're scrapped. And we're seeing it right now.
Yeah. This is the market shedding. Yeah. Totally. So what do you think is the net result of Three Arrows? Is this just 2007, 2008 shakedown, or is there more bankruptcies to come? What's your take on it, Jay?
It might be the first of many. I think if you take a step back and you look at what else is happening in the broader economy, this might be like, what do you call that? Like a foreshadow of other things that are to come. A lot of people have already started saying like, yeah, we're probably not too far away from seeing, bailouts, or at least that the talk of bailouts come back again. So,
Hey man, these are companies that the Fed will not show up for. They will they will be swimming in their Dr. Scrooge, or their not Dr. Scrooge, Scrooge McDuck vault of coins and
yeah.
going, "Oh, I've got real money
Oh
and you needed
no.
what now?" You know what? I need to bring up the Federal Reserve's flow chart of how they do intend to incorporate existing crypto technologies into their US coin.
Oh yeah.
Like,
So what
like
their CBDC?
their
I didn't see
CBDC.
that. Yeah.
XRP is in the mix. Polkadot is in the mix
XRP? Really?
as architecture, underlying
Oh,
architecture, which is why they're trying to
okay.
settle their issues with SEC, because
Yeah.
SEC is a different government body. It's not like the
Mhm.
entire government hates XRP.
Okay.
It's the SEC is trying to control crypto for the future. But the FCC, or the OCC, the Office of Comptroller of Currencies,
Mhm.
they're all fighting to control and govern the legislation. And so as the SEC, it's been holding on to XRP by tooth and nail because this flowchart exists. And this flowchart actually shows the underlying architecture. So maybe we should make a note and bring that up and talk about that for a future show. But I agree with you, Jay. I think this is the beginning of many. But how long? We talk a lot about Bitcoin bottoming out, and Bitcoin as the bellwether or the canary in the coal mine of what's going up and what's going down. And even though it's the behemoth, I don't think it's leading the ship. So what should we be watching that's leading? Is it just like, nope, all this has to bleed out? There's got to be more closures, more bankruptcies. And when the pain is at its maximum, that's when we're watching for a market turnaround. Or should we just be watching Bitcoin price?
I just watched Bitcoin price. I mean, the Bitcoin leads everything. Bitcoin is where
it leads everything.
If we're talking about the crypto market, Bitcoin leads everything. And because of the Bitcoin halving, because that's worked in, I think it's going to be to clockwork. I think 2022, the rest of 2020 is kind of going to be me. 2023 is also kind of going to be me. But going into 2023, 2024 winter, that's when things are going to start to change, because the halving is supposed to happen in the spring of 2024. And it will kind of going to be like the spring of 2020, if you think about that, 4 years ago, where then Bitcoin started to go up. And that's just because the amount of Bitcoin that's going to come out per block size is going to be cut in half. And I think that by 2023, depending upon this recession, I think that you're going to have some quantitative easing. And so when you're printing money again and the Bitcoin halving is happening, we're going to have 2020 all over again. And you're going to go from somewhere around 3,000 to 20,000. But this time, I think it will be somewhere around 10 to 12, 10 to 15,000, and we'll probably crack 100,000 by 2020, January 2025, February 2025. I think we're cracking 100,000. Now that's very far away, but once again, this is just having to do with the Bitcoin cycles. And I was listening to somebody else, and they're like, "Don't even look at Bitcoin; just look at the Fed, because whatever the Fed decides to do, everything else." And the Fed said that they're not going to come down on their interest rates till the end of 2024, which aligns so freaking perfectly with Bitcoin's halving cycle that it's like blowing my mind.
So, okay. So any $1, what's so funny, Jay?
Well, just the last thing that Jared said, it could be that they're all in cahoots. I mean, you never know.
This is Jay's true crime podcast coming out.
We still don't know who Satoshi is, man. I mean,
have you seen?
It could all be some, the Fed behind it.
Have you seen the Japanese conspiracy characters that Satoshi Nakamoto was the CIA?
No, I haven't.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
So if you actually look at Satoshi Nakamoto's, the characters and symbols in Japanese, or it could be Chinese, forgive me, it sounds Japanese. It actually means the central of all the world's intelligence.
Oh.
And there is a huge conspiracy, or some paraphrase that I'm butchering. Yeah. And the conspiracy is that the government knew that the populace is starting to really get heated about the government controls, but they know they need the controls, but we also need an outlet. We need to let the people think that they are completely free. The best slaves are the ones that think they're free. It's not the ones in shackles. It's the ones who think they're free. So how do we give them a playground where they can do anything they want? We can still track everything baked into the code. We can still actually crawl the blockchain and see, and there's already algorithms for this because they've already been able to track ransomware people who do the ransomware for some of the larger like nuclear power plants and stuff. The FBI shows up and arrests them. It's like, wait, you're not supposed to be able to do that. It's Bitcoin. And it's like, no, we can do that.
We can do
that. Yeah, we can do that. And so the conspiracy theorists, and this is not my belief. Go ahead, Jared.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing. And I've also heard that they needed a way to give people the outlets so they could be free, even though they held all the coins. And this is why Satoshi's wallet's never going to touch anything until it gets up to $5 million a coin, at which point the United States has so much money and it's basically eaten up all the dollars of the world. Yeah. And then they take this million and they say, this is now the reserve currency. Here, you take your Bitcoin. We're going to eat up all your other assets. And it's actually a very fascinating idea. And it makes sense the more you think about it, because the United States has to figure out a way in a post-fiat world to be able to still be the number one. Now, I think they will, because they have like $3 to $5 billion already on their balance sheet of Bitcoin, just of Bitcoin that they've like taken back from criminals, essentially.
Interesting.
But if they were to be Satoshi, I mean, and this thing goes to where, the Bitcoin maxis believe it's going to go, by 2040, the United States, I mean, it would be a joke. And then when China and Russia have to come in and buy Bitcoin, it's a wrap, right? Because then the United States is like, well, it's the Bitcoin of the dollar, and you have no more dollars left because you guys both hate the dollar. So your ruble and your yen, whatever. So it's a very fascinating idea. It's not something like, let's put ourselves in 2100 and look back and be like, oh yeah, of course the United States did that, right? That was the most badass move ever since, like, I don't know, the Red Wedding in Game of Thrones. So it seems realistic to me. I know Jay's conspiracy mind now is going crazy, and he's like, "Oh,
are you a conspiracy theorist, Jay?"
No, I don't think he is, but I think all the podcasts
we should hang. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I love all that stuff. And the other thing that I was thinking too. So in terms of what you can watch as the bellwether, so in addition to Bitcoin, it could be regulations, right? Because I think some of what had to do with the price going as high and staying as high for it did as long as it did is there was all this talk of regulations. And so people were hopeful that, at least if crypto becomes regulated, then at least we know what to do. And I think that's why a lot of
confidence.
There was confidence, and the institutional investors got in because they were thinking, let me get in ahead of the regulations.
That's right.
So that I'm already there when it happens. And we saw some regulations, like in the EU, you can't invest in crypto anonymously. And they almost banned, what was it, proof of stake? Is it proof of stake? I forget which one.
They almost banned proof of stake coins.
Yeah. So there's a lot of that, that's
and did we see consumer and investor confidence after those regulations were put into place? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's what allowed for the price to remain as high as it did for as long as it did.
I agree with you. And the main reason I agree with you is this. There's a lot going on in my life right now, and I'm going back to first principles. Are you familiar with the idea of first principles? Elon kind of puts this forward. And every time I kind of feel stuck or at a crossroads, I go back to first principles and I go, of the thing I'm addressing or the things that I'm encountering, what are the first principles of this thing? And I made this tweet, Jarrett, and I was like, I'm gonna lose a friend in Jarrett when I commented about real estate. And I was like, I hope I don't lose a friend here. And because I'm more confident in real estate than ever. And not because of any reason other than if you're a Bitcoin maximalist, I would say I'm not even a real estate maximalist at all. I am a human nature maximalist.
Okay.
And economics is a social science. And what I love about what we're going through with crypto and what we're all three talking about and what all the voices are talking about, what I absolutely love about it is revealing what's bullshit hype and what is the continual revelation of human nature. And I am learning so much about what people are and are not willing to do. Decentralized, going away like this. No one gives a shit. Anonymity. So few people. There might be countries like Venezuela, or Colombia or any one of these countries who have seen a lot of oppression, or at least financial oppression, who still are looking for anonymity. But most of the people out here, like, I don't effing care. I just want to make more money. And seeing some of these things are both affirming and dispelling human nature to me. So when you talk about legislation, that makes a lot of sense because people want certainty in their investment dollars, for sure. So that's what I'm watching for. That's interesting. A bellwether. We should come up with our own rubric.
Yeah, I think it's some mix of the Fed's interest rate, Bitcoin halving, and then just overall probably US government, honestly, because the euro has dropped down to $1, €1.03 to the dollar. It's the lowest it's been in like 2 decades. So it's time for us to all go to Europe. But if you just look at the Fed's interest rates, Bitcoin halving, where it is in its cycle, and then what the US government is thinking about passing as far as legislation, you take those three into account and you come up with some algorithm, you're probably going to have a pretty good idea of whether, if we're just looking at of like an investment, like maybe how much you put in, maybe how much you don't, and where it could be going. Because I think that so many people, one of the biggest FUD narratives, other than it's sucking our world dry of energy, only illicit people use it, and it's a Ponzi scheme, is the fourth one, which is, well, what if the US government says, nah, we don't really want to play this game anymore, and they ban it? Then what happens? And I have a podcast on this. I think that that's not going to happen. I think that we will totally adopt this technology as being a country that needs to lean into technology, or we're going to be left behind.
Well, and if they make those noises, if what you're saying is correct, they're sitting with a Billy on the books of Bitcoin more. That's not no money. And if they do come out with some announcements, human nature is still a part of this, and part of human nature is greed. What if they're the largest market maker on the planet? They could shake the trees and go, boo, things freaky about happen, and it tanks, and they're like, cool, let's just go acquire some more, and then let's just let it run. And they're creating their own market. So I think it's in their best interest. It's in their best financial interest to have volatility that ends up in an upward trend. That's facts, I think.
That's the stock market, right?
Yeah.
That's the history of the stock market since 1929. And even 1929 was just a part of that cycle of boom and bust.
Yeah.
Do we want to think about wrapping it up because we're past the hour, and we'll just come back and talk about Meta digital wallet?
Yeah. I mean, and for those watching, I mean, Jay, give us a rundown. We had 3 arrows. We touched on that. What was Meta digital, so that we know what we're getting into next time?
So they dropped their digital wallet, Novi. I don't know how you say it. Novi.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they got rid of it, but it seems like they're still moving towards cryptocurrency. So apparently their new digital currency is going to be called Zuckbucks. Terrible name.
Wait, are you talking about Facebook?
Facebook, yeah.
Facebook,
I've been
aka
thinking
Meta.
MetaMask this whole time. Thank you for clarifying. Yeah, I'm a rebel. I keep calling them Facebook. I hear you now. Okay.
Gotcha.
What was the name that was terrible?
Zuckbucks. So like Zuckerberg.
Stop it. That's got to be a spoof. If that's for real.
It seems like it's for real. At first, that was the name that was being kicked around. And apparently there was a lot of people in Facebook trying to convince Mark not to do it. But it seems like that's the direction they're going in.
This guy's getting kooky if he does that. Crypto withdrawal pauses. I assume you're talking to all the exchanges that are just preventing withdrawals.
Yeah, but Binance paused for a little while. What's that name of that other company? Celsius?
Celsius is dead.
Oh, they're dead.
Celsius is another one that's part of this whole ecosystem that's just fallen through the floor.
Yeah. So. I like this. And most of this is crypto, and we swore we were not crypto bros. And I think if anyone bopped in, they probably know we're not crypto bros. I do want to start weaving in wealth building. And what are we doing for wealth building? And Jared, you dropped some serious knowledge, and I want to unpack this maybe another time too. And maybe we could seed this question for homework. Why do you believe Bitcoin leads? You use the word leads, and we don't have to answer that here. Save your juice. You got juice. I see your juice. But I'll turn the bullhorn on next time, and you can just rip on why you think Bitcoin doesn't just represent where it's going, but also leads the market itself. We could talk about that. Jarrett, what do people need to know to follow what's going on?
Yes. So if you're listening to this, go ahead, follow us on anywhere you probably listen to podcasts. I'm assuming that it's going to get out to all the platforms. Follow us on Twitter at Not Crypto Bros. Follow us on LinkedIn at Not Crypto Bros and YouTube at Not Crypto Bros. As of now, we are not on Instagram or Facebook, but that may be an intentional thing to get away from the Zuck Bucks. So follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube at Not Crypto Bros. Reach out. We are going to be recording every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will probably add on another recording time as we move forward. But for right now, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Tuesday. We will see you here.
Thanks so much, everyone, for stopping by. And thanks you, gentlemen, for hanging out.
See you.